Hello, and welcome to video blog entry 12 of my video blog for language teachers. I'm Holly, or sometimes my students call me Teacher Holly from hollytreeenglish.com. And I want to invite you to watch this video. It's just me this time. But today's theme is about correction and correcting students in a nice way, of course. And wherever you stand on the issue, this video might be of interest to you. So, without further ado, let's get started. So there is a debate in the field of language teaching, or specifically English language teaching, as to whether corrective feedback for students does any good. Is it necessary? Is it rude? Is it wrong? Is it this, that, and the other? And it's really up to you wherever you want to go in whichever position you want to take. But it is important to know your position on the issue. If you are able to articulate this position to yourself or to others, it will help to clarify the direction that your lessons will take. For example, correcting and offering corrective feedback takes time. So not offering corrective feedback could provide time to do other things in the lesson. However, there are pros and cons to offering or not offering correction. Some of the pros of not offering it are, as I said, this lack of time. Another pro might be less stress in some situations for the students, but that could also be a con. Some students are more stressed if they don't get correction. In fact, a lot of my students tell me that they wish they had a friend or a colleague who would correct them, and that's one of the reasons why they have gone in search of a teacher. So not offering it, there's a con in terms of creating a different kind of stress. Another pro, of course, could be that perhaps you see yourself as more of a model or a mentor, and correction in your thinking might be more the purview of a teacher. And that's okay. You know, I'm not really here to persuade you. The pros of offering correction would be that students are aware, they're more aware of the mistakes they're making when the correction is offered, or they are reminded of things that they have forgotten. A lot of my students come to me after having taken long breaks between their learning English in school and the need to learn English now. So it's, you know, good for them to have those reminders of the things that need to happen in English. And the good news is, cons. The cons are that, of course, it does create a certain amount of stress for the students if they're made to feel worried, or they don't like seeing those corrections pop up or hearing the teacher correct them. Those can be cons. So you need to weigh those, and it could be something that you do on an individual basis. If a student wants it, then you give it. If a student doesn't want it, you don't give it. And that's up to you as an online language teacher. That's one of the benefits of doing this online, is that the format of things can be negotiated between you and the student. So let's move on then to my particular stand. I do offer corrections. I didn't necessarily set out that way. it was something I did with face-to-face students that I worked with as a student teacher or apprentice, whatever, they're kind of the same thing almost. Um, and so I think I considered it a little bit par for the course, but I found out very quickly that also the students who came to me really wanted it. So it was very natural for me to just provide that correction. That being said, there are different ways that you can provide it, and you can do it in ways that aren't terribly obtrusive. So I'm going to demonstrate today how you can offer written feedback online, written corrections, so that you don't actually verbally interrupt your students. If you want to learn a little bit more about verbally correcting students, you can check out my blog post on hollytreeenglish.com, which is called To Correct or Not to Correct. That is the question. Um, that gives you an idea of how I correct students verbally. But this video is going to be more about demonstrating written corrective feedback. So I'm going to share my screen with you. It will be a blank document, and I'm going to demonstrate this for you. So here we go. We've got a blank document, and there are a couple of ways you can do this. You can just, as your student is speaking, let's pretend they say, I writed an essay yesterday. And so very quickly, as they're talking, whoops, without making mistakes, I wrote an essay yesterday. Or you can just use the phrase, I wrote an essay. And you can even narrow it down a little bit if you want to be really quick and just wrote, I wrote. And that serves as a reminder. However, there's a con to this approach. This is an approach that I used for quite a while with many of my students because it was faster. It was easier for me to catch more things because I didn't have to type quite as much. However, if students wanted to go back and look at the chat history later, which, by the way, this is done in the chat box. So we're pretending that this blank document is a chat box. And whichever client you use, even if you are teaching via phone or iPad, there's a way for you to type for your students. You know, Skype has a chat client, or you can be talking with them on Skype and type to them through Messenger, whichever you guys work out to use with your students. But this is one way that the chat box is your best friend. And so we've got this document here, which is pretending to be a chat box. There we go. And students will see that, and often they'll want to look back at their mistakes and do a double check or a review. And just using the phrases like this often leaves a lot to the memory, which is not very often. I mean, it's not too often that the memory is such a steel trap that they'll be able to remember all of the mistakes that they made. So the method that I have adopted is to take the phrase that carries the mistake and to take just enough material that the meaning is clear. For example, in this case, the meaning will be clear enough, the meaning of the mistake and what went wrong will be clear enough if we just do I write it, and my spell check is going to try and no, no. Let's see if it's going to leave it there. Ah, no, it's not. Okay. Well, without fooling with this, let's try and take a different mistake. So let's say the student makes a mistake. Um, oh, this one I get sometimes. She very like it. She very like it. Okay, so I would write the phrase. And there are actually two mistakes here. So we have the phrase and then we have a colon, like something's coming up next. She really likes it. Or you can choose to narrow it down a little bit if you are only focusing on intensifiers, for example, and you want to make your corrections more targeted to the lesson. You would do she very like, she really likes. Okay, very simple. And what I tell students up front is that I say, I'm not magic, so I won't be able to catch every mistake, but I can catch a lot of them. And usually it gets a little bit of a chuckle out of them, so it works as a little bit of an icebreaker as well when you make that joke. Teachers aren't magic or something like that. Now let's go on. I'm going to go down a little bit so it's clearer for you, the delineation. And I'm going to um, show you what I do if students are doing sort of a speaking exercise where you want to reduce the speak time stress a little bit. What I do is I have a blank document like this one that you can see. I have it open, or I open it right before the student starts to speak. And I let them speak, whether it's a timed speaking question or a speaking question that they have been given as homework. Either way, I have this blank document open and I type the corrections. So she, and I do it as fast as I can. Um, um, oh goodness. He um, never. Um, he has never eaten. Whoops. He has never eaten it before. So like this, and it's just, so what it ends up being is a list of corrections and corrected phrases, and I double check it for typos. Then, okay, here we go. Whoops. And then I will highlight it, copy it, and then let's pretend that going down here like this, we've got the chat box, paste, and the student can look over his or her mistakes right there and see what they've done. And we take the time for that right after they finish speaking. And students often like doing this as part of a lesson. Not for every lesson, I don't do it for every lesson, but it's one of my nice little activities. And the cool thing is that it really doesn't take much prep. You just get a conversation question, and you can find a plethora of those on the internet or make them up yourself. What I will often do is find them on the internet, but then I will tweak them. So I'm not often copying one or directly taking one, because I make it my own, and then I use it. So, or I just think of one, or I use them as a way to brainstorm when I go looking for them. So what you can do is you can find these lists of conversation questions, and they will often sort of spark your creativity. They'll get your brain going and get you thinking of a correction. Okay, so you might have had enough of looking at my screen. So here we go. I'm back. And basically, these are two methods of correction that I use, of written correction, most particularly, that I use in class, which students usually really appreciate. And if you record the classes, this written chat history goes nicely with the recordings. So that is going to do it for our video today. I hope you have enjoyed it, gotten some useful knowledge or tips. And if you have any other methods that you use, I would love to hear about them in the comments. And if you think this has been a useful video for someone else, a colleague or a friend, feel free to share, tweet, Facebook, whichever you like, and I'll see you next time.